Hugo Swire.
Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker, for granting this very important debate. It will no doubt be watched closely here in London, in Beijing and in Hong Kong. The fact that this is only the fifth debate under Standing Order 24 granted in this Parliament shows the seriousness with which this issue is taken by the House. It's also demonstrated to anyone following it a clear and strongly held concern that stretches right across party lines. And, Mr. Speaker, I share that concern. The decision to refuse to allow the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee, all of whom, bar one, have been represented or been present in the chamber here this afternoon, the decision to refuse them entrance to Hong Kong as part of their inquiry is wholly unjustified and counterproductive. It is also, as the Honourable Member for Motherwell and Wishaw and others reminded us, unprecedented. It is not consistent either with the positive trend in the UK-China relations over the past year. It does not reflect that the United Kingdom and China have considerable shared interests in respect of Hong Kong. Nor is it in the spirit of the Sino-British Joint Declaration, and as my right honourable friend, the member for Croydon South, the chairman of the Select Committee, reminded us, a declaration which was signed in good faith in 1984 by the then Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and the then Chinese Premier Zhao Ziyang, lodged at the United Nations and which still remains central to Hong Kong's rights and freedoms. The Chinese government has made clear its opposition to the FAC inquiry on the basis of what it says is interference in China's internal affairs. I'm aware of the efforts of the Foreign Affairs Committee to establish a constructive dialogue with the Chinese Embassy and the Hong Kong Trade Office. The British government has repeatedly explained to the Chinese authorities that Parliament is completely independent of government. As the Honourable Lady for Eyre, Carrick and Cumnock rightly reminded the House, the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, as a committee of this House, is also rightly completely independent of government. And the FAC inquiry is scrutinise UK government policy towards Hong Kong. Indeed, that is clear from its title, the UK's relations with Hong Kong 30 years after the Joint Declaration. That is the committee's role in our democracy, to hold the government to account. I've made clear, Mr. Speaker, to the Chinese ambassador on more than one occasion that the government would not and could not try to prevent the committee's inquiry or its visit to Hong Kong. There are numerous precedents for the FAC visiting Hong Kong in 1998, in 2000 and in 2006, and engaging each time with a broad range of society in a wholly constructive spirit. When I met Vice Minister Guo Yezhou of the Communist Party International Liaison Department yesterday morning, I repeated my concerns. I pointed out again that barring the committee from Hong Kong is unjustified and, as the Prime Minister has said, counterproductive. What is more, it runs counter to the positive trajectory in our bilateral relations over the past year, which have witnessed a welcome increase in dialogue, mutual respect and understanding. It is perfectly reasonable, Mr. Speaker, for members of Parliament to want to visit Hong Kong as they scrutinise the British government's policy and quite properly hold us to account over it. Barring them from going simply makes it more difficult for them to hear from all sides in order that they can make an accurate and fair assessment, a point well made by my right honourable friend, the member for Kensington, a former Foreign Secretary. Mr. Speaker, in a little over 2 weeks, we will mark the 30th anniversary of the Sino-British Joint Declaration on the question of Hong Kong, which set out arrangements for the transfer of sovereignty over Hong Kong to China under the one country, two systems principle. It is, as its name implies, a joint declaration to which both parties made a solemn commitment. As a co-signatory, the United Kingdom has both a legal interest and a moral obligation in the monitoring and implementation of that treaty, a treaty which enshrined a high degree of autonomy and basic rights and freedoms for the people of Hong Kong. These are at the heart of Hong Kong's way of life, and it is vital that they are fully upheld. I give way to the honourable gentleman and then to my honourable friend.
Gentleman for giving way. One of the things that the Minister may want to mention to the Chinese ambassador, or any Chinese delegation for that matter, in relation to Hong Kong, but in particular China, in the early 70s, when it wasn't popular with the Nixon administration, Coventry City Council actually made visits to China and started a link with China that resulted in trade deals.
Indeed, and there are many in this House who have dedicated their parliamentary career to furthering relations with China. I give way to my honourable friend briefly.